New Year's Eve was a cloudless day, but the pale winter sun did nothing to chase away the bitter cold. The Whitehead building was a sheet metal building with spray foam insulation adhered to the thin sheets of corrugated metal, but the cold seeped upward through the bare concrete floor. Anthony Whitehead, the chief operating officer, shivered as he walked across the floor, the loud clanging and whining of various machinery making thinking a near impossibility. He looked around and caught the eye of the floor supervisor, Brent Collier. Anthony Whitehead was a tall man with whitish blonde hair, square face, and deep brown eyes. His shoulders were square, his chest muscled, and his waist narrow from his years of laboring as a roughneck on the oil rigs. Even though his father could have paid for his education, Anthony declared that he'd pay his own way in life and his father could be damned. Now, Anthony spent 3 early mornings at Arthur Porter's gym to maintain his physique. Arthur Porter had found and trained Garland Louviere, the Cajun superstar that had been poised to become the next boxing heavyweight champion of the world. Garland's last bout was against Xavier Smith, a washed-up heavyweight boxer. Overly confident, Garland had climbed into the ring. He did not climb out. Instead, his corpse was strapped into a gurney, covered with a white sheet, and carried out of the ring. Arthur Porter trained every person as if they might be the next Garland Louviere, though. "Yes, sir?" Brent asked. Anthony tightened his face. Brent Collier had a way of pronouncing "yes, sir," as if he was saying "your ass, sir." Brent Collier was the type of person that would smile to your face, then slash all of your tires and pour sugar into your gas tank when you weren't looking. 3:30? Send everyone home, tell them have a happy new year, and we'll see them on the 2nd. Okay? Anthony said. "Yes, sir," Brent said, using his odd inflection again. "They'll be paid up to 5:30. No one's losing any hours," Anthony clarified. "Soon as last one punches out, please have the time cards in my door. Okay? Thank you." "Yes, sir," Brent said again. "Smart man," Anthony said as he walked away from the now smirking supervisor. "Anthony, your father's dead," had been the beginning of this nightmare. Anthony Marcus Whitehead had received the phone call at 6:42 in the morning. Through a horrific hangover, he had pushed the 4 or 5 empty beer cans and knocked over the bong to grab at his buzzing, dancing cell phone. Cheyenne, his wife, had let out a loud curse and rolled over. Anthony also cursed, seeing the wine seeping out of the bong, staining the carpet. "Anthony, your father's dead," Susan Whitehead, his mother, had said. "'Bout time," had been Anthony's thought. Marcus had suddenly, abruptly divorced Susan, his wife, to marry a 19-year-old ash-blonde girl, Natasha Yechenbach. Less than 2 years into his marriage with the young girl, Marcus had suffered a debilitating stroke. He managed, just barely, to hang on for another 3 years. "'Bout time," had been Anthony's thought. "Well, this is, well, mother, it's not really a surprise, is it?" Anthony had said out loud. "Hell, what time is it? Tell them call back," Cheyenne complained loudly. Anthony delivered a stinging slap to the complaining woman's buttock. When she whirled around to scream at him, Anthony grabbed her face in his right hand and squeezed. Blue eyes blazing furiously, Cheyenne withheld her retort. Susan continued to give Anthony the information: visitation, funeral. Anthony asked his mother if she'd called the others in their family. Susan agreed that she had not. He'd been the first one she'd called. Anthony said goodbye and ended the call. "My father's dead, all right? My father's dead and you're sitting there making all kind of noise," Anthony screamed at his furious wife. "Well, I'm sorry, like I knew that?" Cheyenne screamed in reply. Anthony staggered out of the bed and down the stairs. Snapping on the light of the kitchen, Anthony watched a few hundred cockroaches scurrying. There was a rotted smell that he could not identify. "Jesus Christ, I cannot believe," Anthony muttered as he resolutely began cleaning the kitchen of their house. "What you doing?" Cheyenne asked, scratching one of her surgically enhanced jugs. "What's it look like I'm doing, Cheyenne? I know, you've never seen anyone in your family do this before, but surely you recognize what cleaning up looks like, huh?" Anthony snapped. "Oh, screw you, Anthony," Cheyenne snarled, pouring herself a glass of wine. Wine. Goddamn, Cheyenne. "Not even 7 o'clock yet," Anthony said. "Hair of the dog, which," Cheyenne snapped. Anthony saw that the kitchen garbage can would not be able to hold all the garbage, so marched into the garage and found a lawn and garden bag. Just as he was dragging the bag out the front door, Cheyenne decided she needed a little more of the hair of the dog. Upon his return from the curb, Anthony started brewing a pot of coffee. A check of the refrigerator showed him several cartons and boxes from various restaurants, but nothing that would serve as breakfast. Another lawn and garden garbage bag was filled from refrigerator and freezer. A tightly coiled sales flyer from the Courtyard Mall served as temporary bug zapper. After drinking a mug of bitter coffee that tasted somehow scorched, Anthony entered their living room. The living room revealed that seeds had popped, had scorched holes into their $3,000 couch. The carpet had likewise endured burns, spills, stains that would not come out. The mahogany coffee table and matching end tables had numerous circles where cans of beer had been placed. No coaster underneath to protect the expensive furniture. There were a few gouge marks. Anthony could not identify the source of those odd marks. The entire time Anthony sweated and strained, cleaning the house, his head pounded without mercy. He wanted a drink. He wanted a can or four of beer. He wanted to crack the seal on the fifth of gin he could see perched on the mahogany bookcase. "What you want for lunch?" Cheyenne asked, coming from the kitchen, yet another glass of wine in hand. "Going cook?" Anthony asked. "Yeah, right. You drunk?" Cheyenne hooted. "Fixing call Hopkins, have it ready for pickup?" "Yeah, thing of hot and sour soup and, twice cooked pork," Anthony decided, looking around the living room and not knowing where to start. "Okay, he said it'll be ready in 20 minutes, Cheyenne said. "Taking your car?" Anthony asked as he decided to try some furniture polish and a paper towel on the coffee table. Cheyenne said, holding up her glass of wine. "Shit, Cheyenne, kind of busy. Never mind." "Never mind," Anthony said, seeing that the furniture polish was having no effect on the surface of the table. After lunch, Cheyenne put more than half of her food into the now nearly empty refrigerator. Anthony ran the vacuum cleaner over the carpet in their living room. Cheyenne had switched from wine to vodka and watched Anthony, an amused look on her face. "Shit." Anthony finally spat and quit trying. He decided to clean himself up and staggered up the stairs. As he walked, he noticed how filthy the steps looked. Apparently, it had been a while since they had been swept and mopped. The light fixture in the bathroom flickered, then lighted the bathroom with a harsh glare. The fixture over the mirror had at one time possessed 3 frosted globes. Now, only one light bulb had the frosted globe, softening the illumination. The other 2 bulbs were unprotected, unfiltered, and the light seared his tired eyes. His face was puffy, with bags under his brown eyes. His face was covered by a dense growth of light brown whiskers. His blonde hair was shaggy, unkempt. "Now what you doing? Looking at how gorgeous you are," Cheyenne mocked, finding Anthony's actions amusing. Anthony looked at his wife's reflection in the mirror. He knew why he had started dating the brash, loud 19-year-old. Her jugs were monumental. They'd been an 18th birthday present from her Uncle Danny, her mother's boyfriend. Her blonde hair was from a bottle. Anthony had actually found the dark roots a bit of a turn-on. And best of all, Cheyenne had angered Marcus Whitehead. Cheyenne Allison Frick disgusted Marcus Whitehead. A pregnancy scare had enraged Marcus Whitehead to the point that Marcus had actually threatened the bleached blonde's life. Susan did not like Cheyenne either, but she tried gentle persuasion rather than threats. The most Susan had managed to do was have Anthony agree to a prenuptial agreement. Cheyenne had balked at signing the document. But Anthony, on the verge of graduating with a master's in engineering, knowing his monthly salary with the parish government of St. and Parish was more money than Cheyenne's mother, and Cheyenne's uncle of the day would make in a year, held fast. "Put your John Hancock on the dotted line, Miss Frick, or you can keep the engagement ring as a parting gift," Anthony had calmly stated. Snarling a string of curse words, Cheyenne did scrawl her signature on the indicated line. Shooting murderous glares at Anthony's attorney, Cheyenne initialed each page of the 7-page document, then scrawled her signature on the last page. "Well, what about her stuff, huh?" Uncle Tommy had asked. "Okay, I'll play along." Anthony had looked at the bloated man. "What stuff? What stuff is she bringing into this marriage? The marriage ends? For any reason?" She can keep her jugs. She can keep her tattoos. What else she got? Now, 14 years after their wedding, Anthony wondered what had possessed him to marry Cheyenne Allison Frick. He looked at the filthy mirror in the harsh glare of the bathroom light and wondered why he'd allowed himself to be persuaded to purchase the monstrosity of a home. And he wondered how and when he had deteriorated into the puffy, unkempt man he saw in the filthy mirror. Thankfully, the hot water heater did work. Anthony used a damp washcloth to soften his 3 or 4 day growth of beard. Then he hacked at the stubble. Cheyenne tired of watching his ministrations and went in search of more alcohol. The entire time he shaved, Anthony's head hurt, pounded without mercy. Oh man, how do blind people shave? Anthony wondered out loud, wanting to shut his eyes against the harsh glare. After his shower, Anthony searched for and found a dress shirt. Pulling the shirt on, Anthony received yet another shock. The shirt did not fit his puffy body. He could barely button it over his belly. The same was true of his best suit. "We about out of weed," Cheyenne informed him when he stumbled down the stairs. "Oh, and my mama said she's real sorry here about your dad. Tell her that's mighty white of her," Anthony said. "Cheyenne, it's almost 4 o'clock. When do you normally take a shower?" "I don't know. Whenever," Cheyenne shrugged, holding out the bong. "Here." "I don't want any more," Anthony said. "Any more? What? Had some upstairs? How much they got?" Cheyenne asked. Anthony said, "No, Cheyenne. I do not want any more. No more of this shit. Jesus, look around." "Huh? This was a $200,000 house. We be damned lucky get $100,000 for it way it looks. And look at me." "Huh? Was 171 day we married. I'm afraid step on a scale see what I weigh right now," Anthony snapped. "I still weigh 124, Cheyenne bragged, indicating her body. "You're bummed too," Anthony said. "No more. No more weed, no more coke, no more booze," Anthony declared. "Hope you don't think that going apply to me," Cheyenne said, eyes wide. "Of course not," Anthony said, walking toward the garage. "I expect you to do whatever the hell you want. Whenever you want, however you want." Anthony drove to his mother's home. Jimmy and Lisa Whitehead, his sister and brother, were already at Susan's home. Knocking once, Anthony entered the home and found Susan, Lisa, and Jimmy at the breakfast bar, sipping coffee. As usual, Susan was between Jimmy and Lisa. "Please tell me there's another cup," Anthony asked, hugging his sister, then his mother. "Uh-huh," Susan agreed. "Call your sisters," Lisa demanded. "They're not coming." "Oh, okay," Anthony said. "Hell, this was a spur-of-the-moment thing for me." No, they say they're not going to the funeral," Jimmy clarified. "I'll talk to them," Anthony promised. "Need you do the eulogy," Susan said quietly. "What?" Anthony laughed a bitter laugh. "What do you expect me to say? He was a son of a witch that had no capacity to bend or yield. It was his way or the highway. The only time he did anything was when there was something in it for him. He was a good father," Susan defended her ex-husband. "Uh-huh, that is one son hopelessly hooked on crack, almost lost his life over that shit. Had 2 daughters get knocked up before they even graduated high school. One of them still hasn't graduated. Minute I left home, never came back. Got married to some plastic tit tattoo freak just to rub his face in it. Thank God we never had any kids. Yeah, mother. He was a wonderful father," Anthony thought. "Mother? Honestly? I don't think I do a very good job," Anthony admitted. "Still keep, thank God." Headache. Jimmy guessed as Anthony took 3 aspirin tablets with a sip of coffee.
"No."
"Jimmy, hemorrhoids," Anthony said sarcastically. "So, quit being a pain in my bum." "Anthony," Susan chided. Before leaving his mother's house, Anthony agreed to talk Cindy and Barbara into attending the funeral. He also agreed to give the eulogy. He did congratulate Jimmy on his 10-year cocaine anonymous medallion and did ask Lisa how her daughter, his niece Gracie, was doing. Carrying a 4.0 this semester, Lisa said with pride. "You got any money?" Cheyenne asked when Anthony returned home. "Couple bucks." "Why?" Anthony asked, reaching for his wallet. "Linnell's coming over, bringing about 3 C's of some bad Bahama Black," Cheyenne said. "Well, Cheyenne, that's a problem. Anthony said. See, I don't want any more of that shit in my house. And, since you wants it? Guess you going to figure some way get that $300, but I'm not paying penny one for it. What? Cheyenne gasped, shocked. Not sure what you mean. What? But I'll say it again. I don't want any weed in my house. I don't want it? I'm not paying for it, Anthony said. In fact, thinking very seriously about throwing out all the booze too. Oh no, you are not. Cheyenne snarled. Somehow, Cheyenne did manage to find $300 by the time Linnell Turner arrived. The man looked disgusted as he slowly counted out the crumpled bills before giving Cheyenne the marijuana. Smelling the pungent smell of marijuana, Anthony's resolve almost crumbled. He almost grabbed a glass, almost poured himself a glass of the gin, but he did not. He instead busied himself, trying to write a eulogy for his father. But, while Cheyenne slept off the combination of wine, vodka, and marijuana, Anthony found her purse and removed all the credit cards and debit card from her wallet. He did the same with his own wallet, removing all but one credit card. The cards were locked into the small safe in their home office, along with any paperwork associated with their cards. Bank statements were also locked away, out of Cheyenne's grasp. In the morning, while Cheyenne slept, Anthony dressed and went to Dusty's country kitchen for a hearty breakfast. The headache had remained and his head pounded with a vengeance. His hands shook horribly as he sipped his coffee. Withdrawal is the first sign of addiction, Anthony remembered from a psychology class he'd taken in college. Where the hell are my cards? Cheyenne screamed into the cell phone. What cards? Cheyenne, you have no cards, Anthony said calmly. Inside, he was not calm. Inside, he wanted to avoid this confrontation with his wife. The cards. The cards. The ones I had in my wallet, moron, Cheyenne screamed. Oh, those cards. The ones all had my name on them? Anthony asked. Those cards? I took them. You don't need them. What? You have no right, those are mine. Cheyenne screamed. Really? Then why wasn't your name on them? Anthony said, and quit screaming. My head already hurts bad enough. Huh? He ended the call just as she started to scream her reply. Apparently, it took her a few moments to notice that she had an audience of none. Anthony let the call go to voicemail. Listening to the first millisecond of her voicemail made Anthony wonder where Cheyenne found the strength to scream. His head hurt too bad to speak above a grunt. Because Cheyenne Whitehead's name was not actually on the account, Mitch Dufour of First Union Bank called Anthony Whitehead when Cheyenne contacted the First Union Bank for another debit card. Mr. Dufour, Cheyenne Whitehead can have a card for any account she currently has with your bank, Anthony said. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead, Mitch said. Any account she currently has with your bank, Mr. Dufour, Anthony reiterated. Any account I have? She has no claim to, no right to, and shall not be given access to any account I currently have with your bank. If Cheyenne Allison Frick Whitehead is given penny one of my money, I will find another bank to do business with. Do I make myself clear, Mr. Dufour? Perfectly, Mr. Whitehead, Mitch agreed and terminated the call. A moment later, Anthony again let his wife's phone call go to voicemail. She left a 1-minute, 48-second tirade on his voicemail. Anthony reduced the volume and listened to the enraged message. He looked around and realized he was driving in front of Whitehead Generators, the large corrugated steel building that manufactured the generators and substations and machinery that bore his father's name, his name. He pulled into the large parking lot and stopped the car. Moron. You think you can. I'll divorce your goddamned. Do you hear me? Cheyenne continued to scream. Oh, thank you, Jesus, Anthony said aloud. Yes, Cheyenne, yes, that is the first thing you've said that makes one bit of sense. Nick Fowler, his attorney, the man that had drafted the prenuptial agreement, had passed away. Anthony felt horrible. He did not remember when Mr. Fowler had died. He vaguely remembered receiving a letter from the offices of Ferguson, Benoit, Fowler, Jones regarding his files, but he could not remember the attorney's name that had taken over Nick Fowler's accounts and cases. Ferguson, Benoit, Fowler, Jones. If you know the extension of the party you are trying to reach, please enter it now, followed by the #. For our company directory, please press 311. For store hours and directions, please press 312. For our general mailbox, please please press 313. For the operator, please press 0. A pleasant-sounding male voice intoned. Anthony hit 311 and listened to the names the directory read out. He did not recognize any of the names, so decided he would go home and try to find the letter in his office. Coming home had been a bad idea. Cheyenne was still in an alcohol and marijuana-fueled rage, and she had reinforcement. Her mother and her mother's current boyfriend, Uncle Bootsy, were also there. For whatever reason, Uncle Bootsy decided he needed to educate Anthony on the rights that Cheyenne, as his wife, had in regards to their finances. Anthony did start recording the confrontation on his cell phone. "Sir, you need to move out of my way," Anthony said. "This is my home. I will not put up with you coming in my home and getting in my face." No, Sonny. See, Uncle Bootsy poked a bony finger into Anthony's chest. "Sir, do not touch me again," Anthony warned. The grizzled old man did not listen and did thrust his finger into Anthony's chest again. The man smiled when Anthony threw a punch. "Was in the army, boy," Uncle Bootsy chortled, easily blocking Anthony's clumsy punch. Anthony's foot shot up and kicked Uncle Bootsy squarely in the crotch. He brought his knee up and crushed Uncle Bootsy's nose. "Miss Frick, you and your boyfriend need to leave my house. Now!" Anthony ordered the now screaming woman and suddenly silent Cheyenne. Anthony locked himself in his home office and began looking for the letter from Ferguson, Benoit, Fowler, Jones. He did notice that his desk drawers had been rifled through and looked over at the safe. The heavy safe had been moved, but without a key, Cheyenne would have very little chance of getting into the box. "Carter fully love," Anthony said, finding the letter. Carter's email address was included in the letter and Anthony logged onto the computer. Then there was hammering on his office door. "Cops are here, dumbass," Cheyenne screamed through the door. "Want talk to you." "Uh-huh, that was pretty quick," Anthony muttered. "And, no sirens?" "Rabbit kicked me there, Sonny," Uncle Bootsy slurred, face still bloody. The old man's eyes opened wide and his mouth opened in a gasp when Anthony slammed a fist into his solar plexus. With a grunt, Uncle Bootsy again sprawled onto the heavily stained carpet. "Nice try, Cheyenne," Anthony smirked. "Again, Miss Frick, you and loser of the month here need to get out of my house." "My house too," Cheyenne shrilled. "He's got a pacemaker." Cheyenne's mother screamed, trying to resuscitate Uncle Bootsy. "Then call an ambulance." "He's not going to get any better lying there on the floor," Anthony said calmly and again closed and locked his office door. When Anthony did hear the sirens, he unlocked his door. He smirked as Cheyenne realized that there were also 2 police cars with the St. Elizabeth Trauma Center's ambulance. Obviously, when she told the 911 operator that her husband had beat up her mother's boyfriend, the 911 operator thought it prudent to send the police along. Cheyenne frantically tried to hide all evidence of marijuana and other paraphernalia from the living room. The kitchen, being the closest room, was her destination as she scurried back and forth. "Right in here," Anthony said, pointing. "An officer? Might want look in the refrigerator there." "You goddamned a hole," Cheyenne screamed, charging Anthony. Anthony allowed himself to be handcuffed and placed into one cruiser. The police officer was apologetic, but since the 911 call had stated that Anthony had instigated the original confrontation, he had no choice but to bring Anthony in. Cheyenne, however, did put up quite a fight. The ambulance loaded the gurney and Donna Frick left in the ambulance with John Bootsy Bordelon. "Here's your keys, sir," the officer's partner said. "House is locked up. Hit that button on the fob and alarm gave off 3 dings. Then it's set," Anthony agreed. "Thank you." "Yes, sir," the officer said, stuffing the keys into Anthony's shirt pocket. Anthony looked around at the throng of neighbors that had gathered across the street. He smiled and nodded to the neighbors. Anthony reflected. He and Cheyenne had lived in the house for a few years now, but he could not name a single one of the curious faces. Anthony said, "Do me a favor?" as they watched Cheyenne being wrestled into the second cruiser. "Yes, sir," the first officer said. Don't put us in the same cell, huh?" Anthony smiled. "See what we can do," the first officer smiled broadly. "Ain't making no promises," the second officer chuckled. "Usually it's the guys give us the most shit, huh?" the first officer said to his partner as he put the cruiser into gear. Ferguson, Benoit, Fowler, Jones. If you know the extension of the party you are trying to reach, please enter it now, followed by the pound sign, the cheerful voice intoned. Anthony punched in 419 and the pound key. A moment later, Carter Fullylove's voice prompted Anthony to leave a message. Sir, your wife wants to know who her attorney is. A female police officer asked Anthony. I have no idea. I didn't know she had an attorney, Anthony smiled. Enjoying this a little too much, sir, the first arresting officer said. Carter Fullylove was a handsome African-American man with a fish handshake. His face showed no emotion as Anthony told him what had happened. He only nodded when Anthony stated he'd also be using Carter for his divorce. First things first, the attorney finally said. First, let's get you arraigned. Then, we'll worry about all that other stuff. God damned a hole. Anthony. Moron. No, screw you. Tell me shut up. Anthony. I need a lawyer. Which get your dyke hands off me. Cheyenne screamed at Anthony and at the bailiff as he and Carter entered the Saint and Parish courtroom. Contestant number 2? Carter asked, displaying a sense of humor that had not been evident earlier. Yes. Let me guess. We have lovely parting gifts for her? Anthony quipped. Zelda, tell her what she's won, Carter said, pointing to his seat. Let me talk to Hightower, see what he's got. Carter and David Hightower, the assistant district attorney of Saint and Parish, bent their heads together, whispered to one another, then stepped back. David looked at the paperwork, looked at Anthony, nodded to the civil engineer. Didn't tell me you worked for Saint Anne, Carter accused as he walked back to Anthony. I am sorry. Could have sworn I had, Anthony said. Anyway, says since he knows where you work, doesn't figure you're a flight risk, Carter said. We'll allow you to give your plea. I assume we're going for not guilty, and then you're out of here. Depends. I don't even know what I'm being charged with, Anthony admitted. Domestic violence, assault and battery, Carter said. Then yes, not guilty, Anthony agreed. God damn it, Anthony Marcus Whitehead. You goddamned a hole? Get me out of here, Cheyenne screamed as Judge Linda Neuenberg slammed her gavel down, releasing Anthony after David Hightower did not request any bail. Keep screaming, dumb witch, keep screaming. Anthony chuckled as Judge Neuenberg demanded that the bailiff remove the female prisoner from the courtroom. Anthony went home, shaved and showered, and found a comfortable pair of slacks and a decent shirt. He then called Carter's office. Okay, I've been arraigned. Let's get the other stuff out of the way, Anthony said. Don't let grass grow under your feet, huh? Carter asked. My father passed away yesterday. No, 2 days ago. Mr. Fullylove, Anthony said. I am truly sorry for your loss, Carter said. It almost sounded sincere. And I have no idea what, if anything, I'll be inheriting, Anthony continued. Knowing my father? It might be a box of dirty diapers and a note telling me to kiss his shitty bum. Carter asked. Not the best of relationships, Anthony admitted. But if it is $1, I want to make good and goddamn sure Cheyenne Allison Frick Whitehead does not get one dime of it. So, we file before the will is read? She'll have no claim. And, got the prenup right here, Carter said. And, thanks to her behavior in court this morning, we know where to have her served, Anthony chuckled. The visitation for Marcus Whitehead was a somber one. Anthony tried to wedge his body into his black suit and found that he could not. Abdul sold him a new suit and a crisp white shirt to go with it. Cindy and Barbara, the twins of the Whitehead clan, did put in an appearance at the visitation. Anthony had pointed out to both of them that they would not be going for their father. Rather, their appearance was to appease their mother. Anthony's eulogy spoke mostly of the empire his father had built and his few philanthropic endeavors. He did share a slightly amusing anecdote with the business acquaintances and few friends and family members present. I don't even remember what boneheaded thing I'd done. I mean, really, out of the thousands and thousands of boneheaded things I've done, try to remember one individual incident, huh? Anyway, I'd done something stupid and my dad just sighed and said to me, you know, there's no trick to loving a good kid, but goddamn, it sure takes every trick in the book to love a bad one. Gee, I wonder who he was talking about, huh? Well, Dad, I'm sure God's using every trick in the book to love you right now, Anthony concluded. Golly gosh, big brother, Lisa whispered. That was so nice. I almost believed you meant it. Bite me, Anthony chuckled and put his arm around his sister. Somehow, Cheyenne managed to parlay her incarceration in the Saint and lockup into drug rehabilitation at the Degard Chemical Dependency Unit in Degard, Louisiana. The only reason Anthony knew about this was because Cheyenne was on his insurance through Saint and Parish. Carter shrugged his shoulders helplessly, but he could not have Cheyenne served. The CDU was prohibited from releasing the names of any of their patients, and they would not, or could not tell Carter Fullylove if Cheyenne Allison Frick Whitehead was, or was not a patient in their facility, even though he knew she was because of his client's health insurance. Whether Carter Fullylove was an attorney or not held no weight with the facility since the pending divorce action was considered a civil matter. Carter shrugged again and contacted Anthony Whitehead. She's either incredibly smart or incredibly lucky, Carter somberly told Anthony. Incredibly manipulative, incredibly sneaky, unbelievably self-serving, Anthony sighed. Reading of the will is scheduled for tomorrow. Oh well. The reading of the will was a bit of a surprise to the Whitehead clan. Even as Marcus had turned his back on them to woo the already married Natasha Yetchenbach, even marrying the young woman when her divorce from Dwight Doucette became final, he had not turned his back on his former wife or his children and grandchildren in his will. Well, I call for an immediate board meeting, Susan said somberly as they sat in the conference room of the attorney's office. Susan's appointment of herself as Chief Executive Officer of Whitehead Generators was approved readily enough. Anthony's appointment as Chief Operating Officer only had the one nay, and that was from Anthony himself. In case you've forgotten, I am currently employed, gainfully employed with Saint and Parish? Anthony said, $42,000 a year? Or a $500,000 a year? Even if you did go to ULD, you should be able to figure that one out, Jimmy said. Anthony, you'd be protecting my money and Gracie's money as well as your own, Lisa cajoled. Shit. Fine. I'll put in my notice on Monday, Anthony sighed to the room. And that's blackmail, using Gracie against me. Then Anthony reached over and slapped his younger brother in the back of the head. Lisa giggled. Susan shook her head. The University of Louisiana at Degard is a fine school, which, Anthony said. Yeah, see how well they taught you, Jimmy said, rubbing the back of his head. On Monday morning, Anthony's insurance contacted him just after he left his supervisor's office. Anthony shook his head and contacted Carter. Cheyenne checked herself out, May, Anthony informed the man. Carter contacted Cash Jackson and gave the process server the address of Ms. Donna Frick and the address of Anthony and Cheyenne Whitehead. The man smiled and assured Carter he was on it. Yo, the man said when Donna answered the door of her trailer. Cash Jackson, at yo service. Hey mama, Linnell said I should holler at Cheyenne. Know what I'm saying? Linnell? Cheyenne said from behind Donna. Shit, that was quick. Just called him what? 5 minutes ago? Know how it is. Was right there, and your boy calls me. Cass smiled widely. Okay, here's the 2 C's, Cheyenne said, holding out 2 crisp $100 bills. No, hang on to that. Going need it, Cass said, losing both his smile and his ghetto inflection. Mrs. Whitehead, you have been served. I what? Cheyenne asked, shocked when Cass thrust the manila envelope into her hand. You moron. Cheyenne screamed when Cass took a quick photograph of her holding the envelope. You know it, Cass chuckled. Y'all have a blessed day, y'all hear? Anthony did not need to wonder if Cheyenne had been served. She called his cell phone, sent him several threatening text messages, then called his office phone and screamed at him when he picked up the phone. Cheyenne, I am at work, Anthony said calmly. Inside, Anthony did not feel calm. He did not like confrontations. This stemmed from Anthony's childhood, from his relationship with his father. Marcus never struck Anthony or Anthony's siblings. But there was always an anger in Anthony's father. The anger was palpable, threatening. You know, work? What other people do while you sit on your fat bum? Anthony taunted. So, while you're sitting on your fat bum, why don't you read through the petition? I'm being very generous with you. Screw you, moron. I'm going to take you for everything, Cheyenne screamed. Hear me? Every goddamn thing. We're a no-fault state, Cheyenne, Anthony reminded her. No matter what, most you can get is 50%. And anyway, we have that prenup. Remember? Screw that prenup, Cheyenne hissed. Anthony did not have to worry about any physical confrontation with Cheyenne, though. When Carter Fullylove alerted David Hightower that Cheyenne Whitehead had left the DeGard CDU without successfully completing the 28-day program, David Hightower had 2 Saint and Parish deputies pick her up at her mother's trailer. After work, Anthony went to his house. Just entering the building, Anthony felt a weariness descend on him. Looking around at the filthy condition, the weariness descended even further, threatening to suffocate him. There is no way. I am not staying here, Anthony muttered to himself. He made a mental note of what he wanted to take with him. His engineer's mind deduced how many boxes he'd need as he cataloged each item. Pinoque Motel had a nice clean room, a room that did not reek of spilled wine and marijuana smoke. The sheets did not have small holes where burning seeds had popped out of the bong and burned through the sheets. The comforter actually had a clean smell, not one of sweat. No one to blame but yourself, Anthony said somberly as he reflected on the disaster his house had become, the disaster his life had become. The clerk, a pimple-faced girl, had smirked when she told him about the movies that were available with each room. Anthony turned on the television, hit the number 2, and scrolled. Amateur, Asian, G. Where's the latest Avengers movie? Anthony quipped and selected Amateur. The grunts and groans, the pulsing synthesizer music provided the backdrop for Anthony's thoughts. 14 years ago, he'd been a handsome young man with a master's degree in mechanical engineering. He had a job, not with his father, not at his father's company, but as a civil engineer with Saint and Parish. It was an easy job. Very little was actually required of him. Look over specs, make sure they were up to code. From time to time, actually drive out to a job site, make sure they were up to code. His degree in mechanical engineering had parlayed well into his nearly mindless government job with the parish. The same had been true of his courtship, his marriage to Cheyenne. Buy her whatever she wanted. Make sure there was enough alcohol, enough marijuana to keep her happy. Indulge her fleeting interests. Every now and then have drunken, stoned sex with her. His degree in mechanical engineering had prepared him well for the mechanics of numbly going through the motions. Oh yeah, you're killing me, yeah, the girl on the screen moaned. At first, Cheyenne's tattoos had been a turn-on. The dark roots had been a turn-on. The fact that the carpet didn't match the drapes was a turn-on. The glassy-eyed look on the girl's face reminded Anthony of the last time he and Cheyenne had actually had sex. Cheyenne's eyes were glassy from the weed they'd smoked. Her breath stunk horribly. Anthony wondered when she last brushed her teeth. He wondered when he last brushed his teeth. It wasn't at all a good memory. Stop, all right, just stop. Anthony spat at the television, clicking off the movie. Tonight, Anthony lay awake in the cheap, clean motel room, just staring at the ceiling. That last sexual interplay had been the night before his mother had let him know his father had passed away. The silence became intolerable, so Anthony turned the television on again. He found Channel 12, an independent station out of St. Elizabeth Parish. Hi, this is Summer Broussard, Performance 12 News at AITA Soaps Building. As you can see, the flames are at least 40 feet high. Captain Richards, what can you tell me about the fire? An attractive blonde reporter was speaking. Anthony leaned against the headboard of the motel bed, watching as a fire completely destroyed a building. There was an attractive blonde woman with curly hair, sobbing while an attractive Latin woman hugged her, tried to comfort her. Here, we have Antoinette Delacroix, owner of AITA Soaps, Summer was saying. Hi, Ms. Delacroix, what can you tell me? Go away, you goddamned vulture. Anita Lopez screamed at the reporter. Can't you see my wife is in no mood for your? That was how Cheyenne should have reacted when they found out Anthony's father had passed away. Not with demands that Anthony hang up. She had a hangover. Cheyenne should have been trying to comfort him, even though, truthfully, Anthony had not been that upset. The urge to drink was overwhelming. The urge to call Linnell by a sea of weed was overwhelming as Anthony watched the fire ravage a local business. He watched the Latin woman and the blonde woman comfort each other as Summer Broussard interviewed one of the volunteer firemen, interviewed onlookers. "You do realize I charge you for every phone call, right?" Carter said lightly when Anthony called him the following morning. "Really? You don't do this out of the goodness of your heart?" Anthony quipped. "What heart?" Carter replied. "Get Cheyenne a good attorney, all right?" Anthony said. Carter asked. "For the assault charges, the drug charges. See if you can get her a good attorney. We were married for 14 years, Anthony tried to explain. Watched some fire last night. Woman was there, trying to hold her wife. Should have, look, we were married for 14 years, all right?" "All righty," Carter agreed. "Frat brother of mine works at Jones, Pellichet and Jones. I'll give him a call." "Whitehead, huh?" And DeFranco, one of Anthony's co-workers, complained as Anthony simply walked out of his office after his phone call to his attorney. "Fire me," Anthony smirked. Shit, can't. I'm a government employee. Bye." It depressed Anthony when he realized he'd overestimated how many boxes he'd actually need. The things he wanted, other than his clothes, was minuscule. His leaving, it would seem, would have no effect on the home. He tried to wiggle his wedding band from his finger. The weight he had gained since slipping the band on his finger made that an impossibility. "And I'm one paid for it anyway," Anthony said out loud. Leaving the wedding ring where Cheyenne would be able to find it would have been an empty symbolic gesture. And, unless he put it in her wine glass, or in a bag of weed, or the bowl of her bong, it might take Cheyenne months to ever find it. Leaving the house, Anthony drove to his bank. With Mitch Dufour's assistance, Anthony paid off the mortgage of their home. His first paycheck from Whitehead Generators Incorporated had already been deposited into his account. The mortgage payment made a sizable chunk in that paycheck. Carter's frat brother had managed to get Cheyenne out on bail. Nathan Garcia, the bail bondsman, had fronted Cheyenne the 12%, based on who her husband was. Nathan had been willing to forego his cash up front policy because Anthony worked for the saint and parish. "Too bad, so sad, Mr. Garcia," Anthony sighed into the telephone. "I did not speak with you. I did not agree to be responsible for my estranged wife's bail." "Estranged?" "She, her lawyer. Ain't nobody said y'all was estranged," Nathan growled into the telephone. And, instead of thanking him for arranging for her to have an attorney, not a court-appointed public defender, Cheyenne called Anthony with a litany of complaints and demands. He simply held the phone a few inches from his head, letting her squawk. "When are you getting off anyway?" Cheyenne asked. "Oh, and my mama wants you drop charges against Uncle Bootsy." "Mama can one in one hand, shit in the other," Anthony said. "And Cheyenne, when I'm getting off, none of your business." "What you mean, it's none of my?" Cheyenne said. "We're getting a divorce, remember?" Anthony said. You're serious about that?" Cheyenne asked, incredulous. Anthony simply hung up. His phone rang a moment later. He let it go to voicemail. A moment later, his office phone rang. He let that too go to voicemail. "Whitehead, go and get that?" And demanded when his office phone rang again. Anthony smiled, hit the button to answer, then rapidly hit the send button and entered in DeFranco's extension number. "DeFranco," she answered her own phone a moment later. "Hey, Whitehead," and screamed. "Your wife? Huh? Pick up." Anthony picked up his telephone, then hung up. He did it twice more. The fifth time his phone rang, Anthony simply walked out of his office. "Oh no, you ain't. My kid's got a soccer game," and complained. "So go," Anthony said. "How am I keeping you from watching your ugly kid just running around uselessly doing nothing?" "Whitehead," Belle Knowles called out after and slammed out of their supervisor's office. Anthony smirked at Anne's triumphant gloat. Her gloat morphed into a hateful glare as Anthony rapped on the door and opened it. "Yes, ma'am?" Anthony asked politely, entering Belle's office. 7 days, huh? Give me 7 days without DeFranco chewing on my bum?" Belle asked, returning Anthony's smirk. "I'll get her a chew toy," Anthony suggested. 7 more days. Until your last day, your last minute here, you are her chew toy, all right?" Belle said. "Yes, ma'am," Anthony said. "Going miss you, Whitehead," Belle said. "Believe it or not, quitting wasn't my idea," Anthony confessed. Anthony renewed his room at the Pinocchio Motel. The pimple-faced girl nodded politely and let Anthony know he could also rent current movies on his television for only $2.99 a movie. Or, I can watch them for free on my phone, Anthony said. Cheyenne called Anthony just as he was debating on where to go to eat dinner. Struggling to reach his trousers, struggling to reach his phone made Anthony question the wisdom of going out to eat. I'm sorry, Cheyenne lisped, adopting a little girl voice. It's so lonely in this big old house without you here. Then move. Sell it. Burn it to the ground. I don't give a shit. I'm giving it to you, Cheyenne, Anthony sighed. Paid it all off this afternoon. It's all yours. And just like that, the little girl was gone. In its place was a stark, raving lunatic. Anthony put the phone on the bed, wobbled to the bathroom, urinated, flushed, washed his hands, and returned to the bedroom. He picked the phone up off of the bed just in time to hear, "Are you listening to me?" "No, what did you say?" Hopkins Chinese restaurant got Anthony's business that night. In an effort to begin his new life, Anthony skipped the order of egg rolls and told the waitress he did not want rice with his meal. And by breakfast, he was ravenous. But he forced himself to get a somewhat healthy breakfast at Dusty's Country Kitchen. A child at a table nearby was too big for a booster seat and so knelt on the bench seat. Her grandfather smiled as the child gamely tried to finish her blueberry waffle. Anthony watched the small child's antics, listened to her patter with her grandfather. Wife called here 3 times already, and snarled when Anthony came into the office. What? Why didn't she just? Anthony asked, patting his pockets. Then he smiled. He'd left the phone on the bed last night when he went to Hopkins for dinner. Evidently, he'd just left it in the bed when he showered then dressed that morning. Get it, get it, get it, and demanded when his phone rang. Whitehead, Anthony answered in a cheerful voice. About goddamn time, Cheyenne screamed. How I'm supposed pay Garcia? Huh? Morons calling here non-stop. Non-stop? Mean, like what you doing to me? Anthony suggested. His suggestion that she get a job enraged Cheyenne even more. When she paused, either to take a breath or to think of more curse words, Anthony told her he was hanging up. He also stated, if need be, he would have his lawyer seek a protective order, barring her from contacting him. Anne's smirk irritated Anthony. Quietly, Anthony did remind the horse-faced woman that when her husband left her, he had been supportive of her. Remember? I picked up the slack around here while you went to court all the times, try and get child support from that deadbeat-ass wipe? Anthony said, face tight. You're right, and said after a long moment. You did. You did. Place opened up by that mall. Acapulco Grande, Anthony said. Want go there for lunch? Can't. Brianna's needing braces, and said. My treat, and, Anthony said. Over lunch, Anthony listened as his coworker filled him in on what his life was about to become. A lonely existence, even with her 3 children crammed into their 2-bedroom apartment. An existence of having to decide between Brianna's braces or a new coat to replace the one that was falling apart. Having to tell children that their wish of going to the trampoline park or the go-kart ranch on their birthday was just not possible. I love them. I mean, shit, they my life. No? But goddamn. Sometimes, and sighed heavily as the waitress assured them that their lunch would be right out. So, what do you do for fun? Anthony asked. Stick pins in my voodoo doll of their father, and said. Wanted kids, Anthony said. My niece Gracie? God, what a beautiful little girl. Breaks my heart every time I think about. Anyway, would have loved to have my own little Gracie, my own Brianna or Shannon. My own little Ricky, even if the kid does like soccer. Want them, they're yours, and joked. Enchilada. No rice? The waitress interrupted. Right here, Anthony said. But, just never seemed like the right time. Cheyenne needed this, wanted that. Now, looking back, realize if we'd had a kid would be having to compete with mommy for anything they wanted. Thank you for lunch, and said as they left the restaurant. Thanks for listening, Anthony said, opening his car door for her. Shit, did more talking than you, and reminded him. Oh, did you? Wasn't listening, Anthony joked. Over the next week, Cheyenne alternated between begging Anthony to pay Nathan Garcia and begging him to return to their home. His offer to pay Nathan in exchange for her agreeing to the petition of divorce was met with screams. "Know why divorce is so expensive?" Anthony asked, and as he hung up after yet another one of Cheyenne's calls. She asked, not looking up from the specifications of a proposed butterfly park. "Because they're worth it," Anthony sighed. "Having meatless chili for supper tonight." "No, not because we're vegan. Because it's 3 days until payday," and said. "Sounds yummy," Anthony said. "Kiss my bum, Whitehead," and snapped. "Sounds like shit because it is shit." And their father and his little 304? They're on one of them dude ranch expeditions? Because Shithead has always wanted to be a cowboy. Well, guess what, Mr. DeFranco? Think your kids would have liked that too? And then his last day was coming to an end. A few people stuck their heads in the office door, wished him well. A few pretended to measure his office, pretended they were moving in before his car left his assigned parking space. "Hey, DeFranco," Anthony said. I did some checking and one of them dude ranch things for a single mom and her 2 girls and 1 boy. Whole week's only couple $100, so here." "What? What did you do?" And shrilled when Anthony handed her the envelope with the 4 tickets. "Places in Oakleaf, Texas. Need to use them before the end of the year," Anthony said. "Bye." His first morning at Whitehead Generators, Anthony walked around, met the employees, observed the mechanics of their operations. His head ached. His ears actually rang before an hour had passed. Leaving work, head pounding, ears ringing, Anthony spotted a squat cinderblock building. A banner announced that Arthur Porter's gym was now open. His ringing ears was no impediment to hearing Arthur Porter. The man was nearly deaf. He didn't talk. He bellowed. With a clack of his dentures, Arthur sized Anthony up, shook his head in disgust, and signed the man up for a year's service. Carter let Anthony know that Cheyenne was demanding counseling. Anthony actually laughed but agreed to go. "Who knows? Couple years ago didn't make my tool wilt just thinking about her," Anthony said. "Yeah, let's go to counseling." "Okay," Carter said. "If she pays for it." "Okay," Carter now smiled. "What the hell I'm supposed to pay it with? My good looks?" Cheyenne screamed into the telephone. "Cheyenne, you know any other way to talk?" "Jesus, my head already hurts from all the noise at work," Anthony sighed. "And I don't care what you pay for the counseling with, but you're the one that wants it. You should be the one to pay for it." You don't want to work on our marriage?" Cheyenne whined. "Honestly? No," Anthony admitted. Somehow, Cheyenne found some way to pay for the first counseling session with Dr. Sylvia Hooperstein. In the waiting room, Anthony nodded politely to Cheyenne and continued to fill out the form. Under employer, he put none. Under insurance, he again put none. Under additional source of income, he put giving B jobs in bus station bathrooms. Marnie Vogel, Dr. Hooperstein's receptionist, smiled when Anthony handed her the clipboard. The attractive middle-aged woman immediately began to type Anthony's information into her computer. "That's disgusting," the woman snapped, blue eyes blazing angrily a moment later. Anthony smirked at the woman. She was still angry when Cheyenne gave her the information she'd scribbled down on her own forms. "Dr. Hooperstein will see you now," Marnie said, pointing toward a door. "Ladies first," the first words he'd said to Cheyenne since they'd entered the small waiting room. 10 minutes into the session, Anthony had no confidence that Dr. Sylvia Hooperstein could help him and Cheyenne rebuild their relationship. In 10 minutes, Anthony had tired of the woman's one-sided opinion, her fortune cookie-style advice. "Anthony?" Sylvia asked after Cheyenne had taken nearly 35 minutes of the 50-minute session. "Yes?" Anthony asked politely. "How do you feel about what your wife said?" Sylvia asked. "Oh, well, know what? It was nice," Anthony said. What was nice about it?" Sylvia asked, baffled at the odd response. "Well, it was nice to hear that she does know how to talk, instead of all the screaming she usually does," Anthony said. After the 3rd session, Sylvia recommended a few individual sessions in addition to the couple's counseling. "Oh good God, no," Anthony retorted. "Well, Anthony, it's obvious that you have some anger toward women and—" Dr. Hooperstein sneered. "I love my mother. She's as gracious, as elegant a woman as you'd ever hope to meet." Anthony said. She's got a big giant stick up her bum, Cheyenne sneered. And my sister, Lisa? We're the best of friends, Anthony continued, ignoring Cheyenne. Another witch with a stick up her bum. I mean, it's a gold-plated stick, but... Cheyenne said to Dr. Hooperstein. And then there's my niece Gracie, Anthony said. His perfect little angel, Cheyenne sneered. Girl's vegetable, but... She was molested, all right? She was molested and she's having a real hard time coping with that, all right? Anthony spat at Cheyenne. Oh, boo-hoo, Cheyenne sneered. Oh, get over it. Huh? Jesus, I was molested too. Don't see me whining about it all the goddamn time. Anthony got to his feet and left the doctor's office. He ignored Marnie as he left the building. Again, since Cheyenne was the one asking for these sessions, she could pay for these sessions. Here you called Dr. Hooperstein a quack? Carter chuckled into the phone. So much for doctor-patient confidentiality, Anthony chuckled. Neither Carter nor Anthony knew how Cheyenne or Cheyenne's attorney had wrangled it, but they found themselves in Judge Ken Theriot's chambers. Cheyenne sat, satisfied little smile on her face as her attorney made his request that Anthony Whitehead be forced to return to counseling and that he be made to pay for such sessions. Anyone, and I do mean anyone but that quack, Sylvia Hooperstein, Anthony countered. And since my client has already done 3 sessions, no more than 5 additional sessions, Carter requested. Is Dr. Kevorkian available? Anthony asked out loud. Died couple years back. I'm afraid, Judge Theriot smirked. 8 sessions with a licensed counselor that both parties can reasonably agree upon. And Mr. Whitehead? Since you are gainfully employed, you are hereby ordered to pay for no less than 65% of these costs. Dr. Jackie Trahan was an attractive woman in her early 30s. She had a firm handshake and looked Anthony in the eyes, looked Cheyenne in the eyes when addressing them. She listened, making notes on a small pad, interrupting to clarify certain statements. She gave Cheyenne 25 minutes. Then she gave Anthony 25 minutes. She also reprimanded Cheyenne for interrupting Anthony. Okay, for next week, Anthony, we're going to talk about your goals. What do you hope to get out of this? Cheyenne, same thing. What do you hope to get out of this? Jackie said. What? Are you an idiot? Cheyenne said, eyes wide. We want our marriage back. Jackie fought down her smirk. Behind Cheyenne's back, Anthony was shaking his head no. Okay, that's your primary goal. Think about your secondary goal, your tertiary goal, Jackie said. I like her, Anthony commented as he and Cheyenne left the woman's office. Oh, you would, Cheyenne said, which was sitting there, flashing her kitty at you whole time. Of course you like her. She what? Anthony asked, pausing by his automobile. Sitting there, legs spread wide, woo-hoo, look at my hoo-hoo while I'm trying talk, Cheyenne accused. Well, I will look next time, Anthony promised. There was no next time. A random surprise visit by an officer of the court to Cheyenne's residence revealed a bag of marijuana and drug paraphernalia in plain view on the coffee table. Then, Cheyenne failed the drug screening. John Bootsy Bordelon was unhappy at his trial. He'd already been replaced in Allison's bed. He made the case against himself worse by threatening Anthony Whitehead in front of the judge, the prosecutor, and the bailiff. Keep talking, loser, Anthony smirked. This, of course, prompted more threats, more promises of retribution. What would have been a simple fine and time served turned into 40 months to be served in a medium-security penitentiary. John did not make it to the facility, though. He died of a massive heart attack 2 days after the trial. Anthony continued to struggle at Whitehead Generators as well. Many of the employees resented him. He was a stranger that suddenly appeared and was suddenly their supervisor. Production began to slip, slowly at first. But in the last few weeks, production was nearly at a standstill. Meetings with the supervisors in each department were fruitless. Each supervisor likewise resented Anthony's sudden appearance. Most of them had started at the bottom and had worked their way up in their individual departments. They held the belief that Anthony should have started at the bottom and worked his way through the ranks. Susan and Lisa were of no help. They were naturally concerned, but neither one had any applicable knowledge of what to do in such a situation. Mother, I am about to do something very, very drastic, Anthony finally said after receiving an irate phone call from an overseas company. Do it, Susan said. Do it, Lisa agreed. In the morning, there were 60 boxes of tornado egg donuts on a table. Each employee was encouraged to help themselves. Grab one, grab 6, grab a dozen of the delicious treats. Large urns of coffee gurgled, brewing dark, rich coffee. There were also 2-gallon jugs of milk, whole milk, and skim milk. Anthony poured himself a big cup of whole milk and dunked his vanilla tornado egg into the ice-cold liquid. All right, Anthony said as the employees chattered. 8, laughed, 8. Y'all? Heather O'Coin, the supervisor of the fabrication department, called out. Mr. Whitehead has something to say. Y'all. Quiet, Brent Collier called out. Thank you, Anthony said, drained his glass and dropped the cup into the large garbage can. He pointed to a large graph. It had color bars extending outward. Red is last year's numbers, ending on this date last year, Anthony said. Pretty good, huh? He let the murmurs of agreement die down. He then pointed to the red bar. You know they were good. All of you received some pretty hefty bonuses in your Christmas stockings, right? Anthony said. They're not Christmas. Brent said. Bullshit. Anthony snapped. They were given out 2 days before Christmas. It was a Christmas bonus. Anyone offended by it being called a Christmas bonus? You can return that bonus to Whitehead Generators. Anyone want to return them? No, then. I hope you all enjoyed those Christmas bonuses. Now, as I was saying before, the PC police busted in. Numbers last year? Good. Numbers this year? Suck. Anthony pointed to the blue bar. The blue bar was nearly 3/4 the length of the red bar. Anyone tell me why the blue bar's numbers suck? Anyone? Anthony asked. The silence was broken by someone coughing. Anthony looked at the employees, the supervisors. They all stared back at him. What's changed? What changed between last year and this year? Has demand decreased? According to our sales figures, that's a big solid no. Has availability of goods changed? Looking at our stock? That's a big fat no. Has the trucking industry quit sending trucks to our loading docks? No. Has shipping to our customers ceased? No. So, what's changed? Anthony asked. Again, silence. A few employees looked down at the hard concrete floor. Only thing that's changed is my father died. And last time I heard, he didn't come down here. He didn't help unload the trucks. He didn't run the parts to fabrication. He didn't switch out tanks. He didn't come down here and do assembly. He didn't load trucks. The man sat in his office and made sure that parts were ordered, made sure bills were paid, employees were paid. Well, that's still going on. So, what's changed? How exactly would the death of Marcus Whitehead affect our production? Anthony asked. After a long moment of silence, Anthony took the bar chart down and folded it. Then he dropped it into the garbage can. Well, this is what's about to change, Anthony said. Either the numbers get back up to where they're supposed to be, 6 weeks from today, 6 weeks from... He looked at his watch. 7:43? Or each and every single one of you. No exception, every single last one of you will be unemployed. Any questions? No. Get to work, Anthony said, turned and marched up the metal stairs to the office. In less than 4 weeks, 27 days from the donut breakfast, Lisa let the board know that production was back to its previous numbers. In fact, they would probably exceed last year's numbers. I say we give them a bonus, Jimmy suggested. I say we don't, Anthony snapped. What? Lisa asked, surprised at her brother's vehemence. A bonus? For doing what they're supposed to do? If I had not gone down there, got in their faces and let them know they were just a few days away from unemployment, we'd still be talking about how bad the numbers are and trying to figure out how to get them up again, Anthony said. So, no bonuses. Way I'm feeling, I'm not so sure I want to give them any Christmas bonuses either. There will be Christmas bonuses, Susan said. Even if I have to give up my share, our employees will get their Christmas bonuses. I thought we weren't supposed to call them Christmas, Jimmy said. I'm Christian. You're Christian. We celebrate Christmas. It's a goddamned Christmas bonus. Any of them offended by the word Christmas has every right to decline receiving their Christmas bonuses. But I'm willing to bet on your life that not a single one of them will be offended, Anthony snapped. Bet on my life? Huh? Jimmy smirked. Not yours. Any more new business? Susan finally interrupted the brotherly squabble. Yes, there's the new business of why Anthony's a big old but head, Jimmy said. Then I move we adjourn, Lisa said. Seconded. Anthony agreed. Anthony continued to pay the utilities and insurance on the home, even as he looked for his own home. At first, he thought to move close to the factory, but did not care for the neighborhoods in and around Pinoque.